Ciao friends! In this video we're going to see how to implement in DAX a technique to retrieve the name of the active security roles for the current user. In DAX we have a function to get the username indeed, but we don't have a way to know which security roles are active for the current user. Now this should not be used for hiding data or changing the number displayed. It should be used only to improve the user experience, for example by changing the color of some visual depending on the active security roles. This is because the security should already hide the data that a particular group of users should not be able to see, and that is guaranteed by the security roles. We're just talking about the need to further customize the user interface, trying to guess which security role is active without looking at the username and trying to figure out this by using other complex configuration tables. So we will see a simple technique that actually can be also implemented with a simple C# script, so just with a click of a button if you want, but it is good to know how it works so that you can understand how to use it in your model. This technique has been suggested by David Boysen from Tabular editor, that I want to thank for the suggestion for the video. Let's start with the demo. So let's start with the example we prepared. This is a Contoso model, the classical example we use for many articles, and we have a number of security roles. In this case we have legal, marketing, operation, production and sales. Now if I have to check who the current user is, I can use the function username. So I could create a measure. Let's create a measure current user, and I can type just username. So let's enlarge the font. So this is the measure I created now, and I'm going to display this measure in the report. As you see, I have my name, my username in the Azure Active Directory, which is displayed in this case in a card visual. The idea is that I might have some visual that I want to customize, or I just want to display the list of the security roles to which my user belongs to. Of course, when I am in Power BI Desktop, I cannot obtain automatically the list of the roles to which my user belongs to. This is only available when I publish this on Power BI Service. But we can test this into Power BI Desktop by using the View As feature. With the View As feature, I say, okay, I belong to the legal security role. As you see, Power BI Desktop displays that we are looking at the report as legal, so that we are aware that we are testing the report with that security role. But let's say that besides the security, you need to display or use the name legal in order to customize the user experience. Of course, this should not be related to hiding data or changing the value of a measure. This should be related to customizing some element of the user interface based on the user to which my user belongs to the role to which my user belongs to. And the problem is that we don't have a DAX function to do that. If we had a current security role, so we could just use the list and display that. So the idea to solve this problem is the following. What if we create a table completely disconnected from the other tables in the model, actually a hidden table that will not be even part of the, or will not have any relationship with the remaining table of the model, and we apply to this table a filter, a security filter, one for each role. If this table has one row for each security role, we can make sure that each security role only filters one row of this table, and this table contains the name, and so we will display the visible names in this column so that we will obtain this way the list of the security roles. Of course, there is something that we have to do in order to do that. We have to pay attention to the detail, but just to understand where I want to go. So what is the final result I want to obtain? Let me show you quickly the final solution we want to obtain. We want to obtain a solution where, first of all, we have the ability to display the name of the security role that is active. So for example, if I enable only legal, like I try to do in the other model, I see legal in this measure, in this case in a card, but I have a measure that returns legal. But what happens if the same user belongs to 2 or more security roles? We can try, if my user belongs to legal and marketing, to both legal and marketing, of course, the function that returns a single security role will not work. We can use a list, we can get the result using the function values, and we created, just for visualization purposes, a measure that displays the list of the security roles. So in case you have more than one and you want to see all of them, you will have to manage a list, a table function, and we just created a measure in this case to display that. What is more common is probably that in order to customize the report, we want to check whether the user belongs to legal or to marketing to display a particular visualization in a particular way or with a particular color. So in order to do that, we want to have individual measures, one for each role, which returns true whether that role is active or not. So for example, we see that that is legal role, there is a measure called is legal role returns true because I'm legal, I'm part of the legal, but it returns false if I test is operations role. So is operations role is false because my user doesn't belong to that role. Finally, we also want to check whether a user is an admin. Who is an admin? Well, when I stop using the view as, I'm an administrator, and also when you connect your user to a published report and your user belongs to the administrator role, of course, the security is not applied. So you might want to be aware that you have a user that is an administrator, which technically sees all the security roles, but in this case, as you see, is admin is also true, whereas if I enable all the security roles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this admin should be false. So this is just what I want to obtain. I want to be able to create these measures, because this way, if I have these measures, I can actually use these measures in my properties, in my dynamic properties of the visual, when these are available, of course, to customize the user experience, to change the color, or to make some element invisible by setting the color to the same color of the background, for example, until we have a visible property that we can customize in the visual. But the principle will be the same. So how can we obtain this result? So let's go back to our model where we still don't have anything. So the idea is that, okay, we create this table, we apply the security role to each role for that table, so that we filter only one row, and we read the content of that column, the visible elements of that column. This is the idea, but let's see how we can implement it. First of all, we have to create a table with a list of the values. I'm going to use a calculated table. You could use another technique. Of course, the problem here is to synchronize the content of this table with the list of the security roles. So let's create this table called roles, and I will use a select columns to customize the column name of an array that has just the list of the roles that I have in my model. So if I remember well, I have a role called sales, a role called legal. Actually, I have a note about these names, otherwise I will not remember. Marketing, and then operations, and then we have also production. So these are the 5 roles, security roles I have in my model. I want to add another row, an additional row for the administrator, that is a user that can see all the roles, but is also an administrator, which means that it is a user to which the security is not applied. So I also include admin here. Now, I want to rename, because this table constructor will return a table that has a name value. So I want to rename this to role, so the column name should be role, and of course I display value as expression that I had to compute in select column. So if I do that, and I display the result of roles, here we go. We have, we have our role column in the roles table that displays these names. Now at this point it could be a good idea to hide this table, but at the moment I will continue keeping it visible just because it is easier to use. So now I have the table and I can go back to my modeling tab, and in manage roles, for each role I have to set a security condition to the roles table. So for example, the roles must have a condition where the visibility is only limited to role is, so I want to do the same, oh sorry, equals, not is, sales, because this is, no, sorry, legal. This is legal, so it has to be legal. And I save this. Sorry, before saving this, I can go to marketing and I can do the same. So this will be marketing. I just have to copy the name. So if I use the right names, I just have to use the same names, the same name of the role for each of these. So let's complete this. And of course, then we will talk about how can I automate this operation, because if I make a mistake in the name that I'm writing, I could have something that doesn't work well. So let's continue this. So let's save these changes. And if you think for a moment, I have a filter for each security role. Every time I have a security role active, I filter only one row. Admin is never visible if I have a security role active. Only the administrator that doesn't apply the security will see all the rows, including admin, in this table. So at this point, what happens? Remember, I'm viewing this as legal. If I create a measure, so for example, I create a measure, new measure, active roles, okay? And active roles is equal to values of roles, role. Values returns a table with the list of values in the role column for the roles table, active in the filter context, which means that at this point there is only one legal, and because I have a table that has one row and one column, guess what? I can use this active roles measure in my report and I can see legal. And actually what happens if I change this and I show two values, and I simulated that my user belongs to two security roles, at that point something strange will happen, because of course values at this point will return legal and marketing. And now I have an error, because now I have values that is returning two values. What does it mean? Well, if we want to create a measure that only works when we have a single security role selected, we could use a selected value. So selected value will return a value only when there is one value selected and blank in any other case. This could be a good solution if you know that in your security model, a user can belong only to one security role. So for example, let's do that. So let's create another measure. By the way, I want to move these active roles into the roles table. So I prefer to have these technical measures here. I will fix this later. At the moment I create an active role measure, which just returns a single security role. So let the value of roles role. And this way I can see if I replace, I think I can do this. I can change this to active role this way. And you see I have blank now, so I have a valid value, but if I use in view as a single role, let's move to marketing this time, I would see here marketing. Now, what if I want to see all of them? Technically, values is enough. So values provides me the list of the roles that I can use. But if I want to display this list in a single card, I have to get, so let's use in this case my active roles measure, which is what I wrote before. Now this will create an error probably, because active, oh sorry, no, it doesn't create an error because I have only one security role active. So let's go back to legal and marketing. And now, of course, this generates an error. So let's fix the error. Let's create something. We have to just remove this. I don't know. Okay. How can we fix this? Well, we can just concatenate these values, for example. So if I write concatenate text and I iterate the list of the roles provided by values rows row, and I extract the value of this column and I separate multiple roles, multiple role names with a comma, I will get the list of the active roles this way. So far, so good. So I obtained a measure for the active role, a measure that has the list of the roles, even though probably I will just use the result of values in my DAX code if I want to do that, if I want to do some analysis. For example, I may want to check, I may have the need to check whether the user belongs to legal. So I create a new measure, is legal role, which basically has just to check whether the value legal is included in the list of the values returned by values roles role. Let's write it. So legal in values, I remove the mouse, values of roles role. And this way, if I show is legal here, you see that this is legal role is true now because I belong to legal. And I can continue this way. I can create all the measures this way, and I will have all the possible combinations. If I go back to the solution I showed you before, this is actually what I already did. I have one measure for each role plus one measure for admin. And if we take a look at the measure I created for is admin role, is identical to the other ones. It's just admin in values roles role. Of course, this condition will be true only when I'm connected without impersonating any security role. So if I stop viewing, see that now this is false, if I stop viewing by using the security roles, this becomes true, because the only condition when admin is visible is when there is no security applied to the model, because we are administrators. Now, you realize that this technique works, and of course, it can be useful. The only complication, I would say, is that there is a lot of manual work involved in creating all these measures, in making sure that the table has the same names. And if you make a change to the security roles, you have to remember to update everything. So why not to automate everything? And this is exactly what we did. So you will find in the article in the article related to this video and in the sample files that you can download from the article page, a script that I prepared, and I'm just checking where is the file we can start with. So this is the same file I used at the beginning. This file has the security roles that we defined, that we have seen before. We don't have the table rows, we don't have the measure, so this is exactly the initial stage when I started the demo a few minutes ago, and I want to create everything with a single script, adapting what I create, of course, to the existing security roles. So let's do that. I go in Tabular Editor, and by the way, I'm going to use the Tabular Editor 3, but we also have the script available for Tabular Editor 2. I use Tabular Editor 3 just because the user interface is easier to use. 1 second, it has been opening another window. So I'm going to open a file from this demo folder. I open the version for Tabular Editor 3, and this C# script that can run in Tabular Editor reads the list of the security roles, creates a table, creates the measures that we need according to the specifications that we have seen previously. So I just run this code. I wait a couple of seconds. I go back to my, I have also to apply the changes that I made to the model to Power BI Desktop, because otherwise these changes are not applied. And now I have a Power BI Desktop that recognizes that we created a new calculated table. I refresh the calculated table we just created, and as you see, we have the table, the measures. I can just move the measure here, I move the other measure here, and if I go back to modeling and view as, I simulate this time operations and sales, and it just works as we expected. So the script is just something that simplifies the adoption of this technique. In case you need to implement this feature in your particular model, you run the script again in order to update the table if you need to get new roles, new security roles in your data model. This is just an idea. Of course, you can create other measures on top of that, or create other evaluation of the conditions. The measures we proposed are probably the basic ones, the more common ones that you expect if you have to implement such a technique. So we have seen that it is possible to retrieve the active security roles by adding a calculated table and by creating specific measures to test whether a particular security role is active or not, and to get the list of the active security roles. Remember, this should be used only to customize the user interface, not to hide or change the data. That is actually what you should do with the security roles, but this is just something to improve the accessibility and the usability of your reports. Enjoy DAX!